Good morning. I'm going to be the first speaker for this instruction course on OCT angiography. I'm going to share my screen now. So this is a basic course. It's targeted for people who have just started using OCT angiography, starting to look at images, not completely familiar with the technology, and sort of fiddling around with the machine, but still need a little bit of input on, how to get the best of the machine that they have. And there'll be 5 of us who will be dealing with different aspects of OCT angiography. Is the slide not moving forward?
No, it's
Okay.
not.
Can you check it once again? Can you disconnect it and connect it again? Reshare it. Yeah.
Just a second. Okay. Now can you?
Yes, yes.
So the outline of this IC will be, we'll first talk a little bit about the technology and how to read an OCTA report. We'll then discuss what the limitations and advantages of the technology are. And then my colleagues will discuss the usefulness of this imaging technique both in glaucoma and in retina. So what is the basic principle of OCT angiography? So you basically get an image like this without having to use any fluorescein or any dye. So it's pretty fascinating. It's a non-invasive method of delineating the blood vessels. And how they do this is fairly simple. So the hardware is the same as that of an OCT machine. But what it does is instead of scanning the region one time, it repeatedly scans the same region. So you then get images overlaid, and the algorithm will assess each point and determine what the variation in the OCT signal is. For example, I'll put a pointer here so that I can show you. For example, in this point over here, the OCT signal is very similar. That's called a low variance, and hence it means that that's probably a static point. Whereas at a different point over here, we are seeing quite a lot of variance in the OCT signal. This is not normal and is usually caused by something moving. So we're using motion contrast. The only thing that typically moves is red blood cells, and this helps to delineate the blood vessels. Now, after they do these repeated scans, they use algorithms. Different machines use different algorithms. The one that we are going to describe in this course is the one based in OptoView, which is the split spectrum amplitude decorrelation angiography. And you end up with scans like this of the disc and the macula. The scan of the disc is about 4.5 into 4.5 millimeters. The macula can give you a 3 into 3 or a 6 into 6 millimeter scan. And each scan will be separated into different zones, and you can calculate certain parameters in each of these zones as well as in the entire image. Now, the parameter that we most often use in OCT angiography is the vessel density, and this is nothing but the area occupied by vessel, that is the white area, upon the total area into 100. So the value is given as a percentage. So if you look at this inside disk area on the disk map, for example, you can see only about 30% of the area is white. So that's typically what we see in an inside disk area. Whereas if you look at the whole image, you would say that about 60% of it is white and the remaining is black. So this is how vessel density is calculated. Now, apart from giving you this image of the total retinal thickness vessels, the technology can also give you the vessel density in different layers. So for example, in the optic disc, you have the nerve head layer, which is from the ILM to 150 microns behind that. It will only give you the vessel density within this layer. The radial peripapillary capillary layer, which is basically the thickness of the retinal nerve fiber layer. It gives you the vessel density within that area. And lastly, the choroid. In the macula, again, similarly, you have the superficial macula, the deep macula, the outer retina, and the choroid. Now, why are these scanning regions important? Because if you want to find the vessel density in a particular area, you should use that appropriate layer. So for example, in the inside disc, that is if you want to find out the vessels within the optic disc, you should use the nerve head layer to best calculate this. If I use the RPC layer, you'll see that most of it will be black and you won't get an accurate calculation. So for glaucoma, at least, we use the nerve head layer for the inside disc region. For the peripapillary region, we use the RPC layer. And for the macula, we use the superficial vascular plexus. This is what a typical printout looks like. So over here on this side, you have what I've been describing thus far. Adjacent to that, you have the en-face image. And you have the two cross-sectional scans, the B scans below. You can move these red and green lines to look at different cross-sections of the scan itself. Important things to note are you have the signal strength index on top, and I will be discussing that as it's one of the limitations towards the end of this talk. You can measure different parameters, but the most often assessed is the density. On this section here, I know it's small, but this is the area where you can actually choose what layer you want. So the nerve head layer or the RPC layer, after chosen, it will give you the densities in this scan, in this little chart over here. And those will change depending on what reference layer you have chosen. And over here, we have a heat map. So now this is important because this is not compared to normative data. We don't have inbuilt normative data for this machine as of now, but this is basically the hot and cold colors showing how much vessel density there is. So if you see the central area, it's about only between 0 to 20%. Whereas if you look at, say, this supratemporal area, it may be around 60 to 70%. So this is just a heat map for you to localize areas of poor vessel density. Now, if you look at this density map, this is just an enlarged version. Again, you'll see it gives you the whole en-face region, the inside disc, which is the OCT. Because this is basically an OCT machine, it will give you the OCT layers as well. So this is auto-calculated based on the ending of the RP Brooks membrane layer. It'll calculate the disc on its own and give you the inside disc measurements. The peripapillary area, as mentioned here, has a ring width of 0.75 millimeters. And then it can divide this area into 6 Gave heat sectors and give you the vessel density for each region. The software also can divide it into 8 segments, but you have to arrange for that within the software. Similarly, the macular printout is almost the same. The parts of the printout are the same, and you can choose what you want to look for depending on what the disease is. Now, this technology has been around for around about 6 years, and there have been a lot of changes over the last 6 years. And when you're reading this literature, it's often a little confusing because terminology has changed and the technology itself has changed. So we will briefly describe what it was and what it is now, so that going forward, based on the machine you have, you will be able to keep yourself updated with what is happening. So I will divide this section into the artifacts, because you have to rule out artifacts before you look at these parameters. What the retest variability is, because that's important for every new machine. And I'll talk a little bit about the signal strength index and the limitation of this particular machine. So when we first got the OCTA, this is a study we did maybe 2016-17, where we were comparing the diagnostic ability of OCT and OCT in glaucoma. And this is one of the first images in that paper, which show you how many images were not usable because of artifacts. And you can see that it's quite stark that the OCT, whether it was the GCC or the optic nerve head scans, it was under 10% that we couldn't use. In contrast, OCTA scans were between 20 and 30%. At that point, we were not sure whether this technology is usable at all because of this high prevalence. And why is there such a problem with artifacts? The reason is obvious. Here, you're scanning the same region multiple times. So the scan time is that much longer. And whenever you have a higher scan time, it takes that much, the chance of getting artifacts is that much higher. So the most common artifact that you get is motion artifact. So as that raster line is moving across, it'll give you this image on the left if there is no motion. But this technology is based on motion contrast. So if while scanning this region over here, the patient moves his eye, that area will have a high variable OCT signal across the line, and you will get an artifact called a line artifact or a motion artifact. These are very common. And nowadays, if they're in the periphery or in an area where we're not calculating vessel density, it is still okay to use this image. But if it comes anywhere within your area of interest, you can't use the vessel density as because of the artifact. Now, sometimes because of microsaccades, this can be a big problem, especially in advanced glaucoma. So a lot of time you get this kind of defect called the checkerboard defect, which has these sort of checks or a quilt pattern. And this is because the microsaccades cause high variability and this sort of vertical and horizontal lines across. And these are images that you just cannot use. Then you have floater artifacts. Again, you see this large area which shows like there's a dropout, there's absolutely zero vessels here, but that's because of the overlying floater, which you have to see in the en-face image. So before you actually read the values, just like in OCT or visual fields or any other imaging diagnostic tool, you have to first make sure that the test is usable, the image is usable. Then we have vessel doubling. So we know that vessels don't exist like this at the optic disc. You don't get vessels back to back. And when this is actually a problem in the post-processing, when the image is being processed to reduce artifacts, sometimes it gives you artifacts like this, and you need to redo the scan once to correct for it. And lastly, there are projection artifacts. So when light goes through or when light hits a vessel, some of it will be reflected, and you'll see that in the superficial vessel scan over here. A small amount of it is refracted. It goes through and bends. And when that light hits the RPE, it gets reflected back, just like any other. So when you look at deeper layers, you often get like a mirror image of, almost like a shadow of these vessels in the deeper images. These vessels don't exist, but they're just projected from the superficial layers into the deeper layers. So when you calculate vessel densities, the deeper layers are always going to be a little less accurate. And nowadays, because we've identified this, there are people who've done work on sort of removing the projection artifacts. It's called projection resolved OCTA, and this is currently being developed. Another advance that they've done is they've separated the capillaries from the large vessels. So once you do that, again, the problem with projection artifacts becomes less. The other advance in reducing the artifacts is, they've improved the scan time and things like that. So we now have high density OCTA. So the image on the left is what we used to use in 2015-16. And since 2017-18 onwards, we get images as good as the one on the right. So you can definitely see that there's improvement in the technology. And with all this, because they have been working at it quite a lot, we've seen that the prevalence of poor quality images has reduced. And in our later, say 2019 work, we have seen that with high density imaging and eye tracking, the prevalence of poor quality images has been reduced to around 5%, which is acceptable. So that's one step forward in making this technology useful in the clinics. Now we come to repeatability. Whether it is in retina or in glaucoma, we know that we have to follow patients up over time. We need to see whether the lesion is increasing or decreasing. We need to see whether the progression is occurring or not occurring. And the first step in that is to check the inter-visit repeatability. So the earlier version of the OCTA, when we looked at the repeatability, the test-retest variability was around 6 to 7%. And that is quite high. For example, in OCTA, it's 5 microns, which is very good repeatability. And that's why we've been using it for so long. They have improved the technology with these reference scans, and it has reduced now to between 3 to 5%. So we're in the right direction. I think there's still room for improvement in the test-retest variability, but there's definitely improvement from what it was. And the last thing I'm going to talk about is the signal strength index. So whenever you have a parameter that you're looking at, you need to know, what are the determinants of that parameter. For example, if you have cup disc ratio, one of the big determinants of what the cup disc ratio is are the disc size. The bigger the disc, the more the cup disc ratio. Just like that, we looked at what the determinants of these vessel density parameters are, both in the disc and the macula. And what we found is, there was some variation with hypertension in one sector or diabetes in another sector, but consistently across all areas, the signal strength index was one of the big determinants of what the vessel density was. That is, if an image had a higher signal strength index, it ended up having a higher vessel density. And this is important because it was across all values of signal strength index. If you look at this chart, the signal strength index plotted on the x-axis and the vessel density plotted on the y-axis. Now, it's not like at any point in the signal strength index, this value levels off. As the signal strength increases from 45 to 55, the vessel density is increasing further. If you go to 75, the vessel density increases even more. So signal strength index becomes a very important parameter in the determining of the vessel density. Unlike in OCT, for example, in this same machine, the OptoView system for OCT, after a signal strength index of around 40, we are not seeing any change in the RNFL thickness. This is not. So you have to account for signal strength index in any study that you do, especially in patients of follow-up. If the patient develops a cataract and the signal strength index falls, you will also see a fall in the vessel density. And if you're doing a study, you have to adjust for signal strength index in all, across the scans. So to conclude, acquiring an OCTA scan is easy. It's the same as an OCT, but it takes a little bit longer. And with the improvement in the technology, there has been a reduction in the prevalence of poor quality images and a reduction in the test-retest variability. So with this little background, we'll now move on to how this technology is used in ophthalmology. We'll discuss its uses in glaucoma, and I've divided this into what the changes are in the superficial layers and in the deep layers. And then my retina colleagues are going to discuss OCTA again in superficial retinal diseases and deep retinal diseases. Okay, we'll start next with Dr. Sujani, who will discuss the superficial vascular changes in glaucoma.